Hello, welcome to the Purple Planet, where we help you drift into dreamland with the timeless and historical tales of queens, empresses, priestesses, and warriors from across the ages. Under the gentle sweep of the northern wind, the Tang Empire shimmered like a pearl on the Silk Road. It was a time when the jade courtyards of Chang'an glowed with lantern light, and crimson-robed officials moved through echoing halls, their footsteps muffled by the hush of ceremony. The air, thick with the scent of incense and plum blossoms, carried whispers of poetry and statecraft in equal measure. Scholars composed verses by moonlit scrolls, while merchants brought silks and spices from the farthest edges of the world. In this golden age, the Tang Dynasty, born in 618 CE, stood unmatched in splendor, a kingdom where the arts flourished and the empire's reach stretched far beyond its borders. Yet beneath the surface, the imperial court was a place of intricate rituals and shifting alliances, where ambition and caution danced together in the shadows. Every word and gesture was weighed, every glance a message, every decision a stone cast into the endless pond of history. It was in these storied halls that a remarkable figure would rise, a woman whose name would echo through centuries, both feared and revered. In the annals of China's vast history, only one woman would ascend the dragon throne, claiming the title of emperor in her own right. Her name was Wu Zetian. Some called her a villain, a usurper who shattered tradition and bent the world to her will. Others saw a visionary, a ruler who brought peace, reform, and unprecedented brilliance to her realm. Yet even these labels seemed too small, too simple, for a life shaped by both myth and memory. Was she a dragon in silk, a phoenix reborn from the ashes of destiny, or something far more human, a woman of ambition, intellect, and unfathomable resilience? This is her story, a tale woven from history and legend, told not in the clamor of judgment, but in the quiet turning of seasons, the soft glow of lanterns, and the enduring mystery of power. Let us walk together through jade courtyards and moonlit gardens and listen for the footsteps of Empress Wu Zetian, the dragon throne's only empress. And so it came to pass in the year 624 CE, under the tranquil skies of Shaanxi province, that a child was born to the noble Wu clan. The town of Wenshui, nestled by the Fen River and bordered by fields of ripening millet, was a place of gentle mornings and lingering twilight. In a grand courtyard painted with the green of bamboo and the pale gold of chrysanthemums, Wu Zhao opened her eyes to the world. Her father, Wu Shihuo, was a respected official, a man who read the classics beneath mulberry trees and believed in the quiet power of learning. Her mother, Lady Yang, came from a family of scholars, and she filled their home with the soft music of the qin and the rustling of silk scrolls. Unlike most girls of her time, the young Wu Zhao was not confined to the shadows of the women's chambers. Instead, she wandered the gardens, reciting poetry, listening to the songs of nightingales, and watching her brothers practice calligraphy under the watchful gaze of their tutors. It was said that from a young age, Wu Zhao possessed a sharp mind and a calm, unwavering gaze. Her laughter rang clear through the corridors, and her questions were many about the stars, about the stories of old generals and wise sages, about the rules that shaped the world outside her father's walls. Some believed a spirit of destiny lingered near her, for even in childhood she seemed to move with purpose, She learned to read the Confucian classics, tracing each character with patient care. She absorbed lessons in history and philosophy, her thoughts already turning toward the great currents of power and virtue. Music, too, became her companion. The plucked notes of the pipa echoing through moonlit evenings, the rhythm of court dances, practiced in silk slippers, on polished stone. But Wu Chao was not content with learning alone. She rode horses with her brothers, her hair streaming behind her in the wind, and watched the soldiers drill in the courtyard, their armor shining like hammered gold. In the quiet hours, she would gaze at the distant mountains and wonder what lay beyond, her heart restless with the longing to see the world beyond Wenshui. At 14, her life changed forever. The imperial court, always hungry for beauty and talent, summoned her to Chang'an, the heart of the Tang Dynasty. She journeyed through fields and forests, past temples wreathed in incense smoke, until at last she entered the fabled city, a place of soaring pagodas and bustling markets, where the emperor's word was law and the moon rose over endless rooftops. There, Wu Zhao became a Chiron, a low-ranking concubine in the court of Emperor Gaozong. The palace was a world of its own, crimson pillars, lacquered screens, and silent corridors where secrets hung thick as mist. She was but one among many, yet even in the quietest moments, she watched and learned, her eyes reflecting the subtle games of power that played out behind every folding screen. For years, she served in silence, her presence barely a ripple in the vast sea of courtly intrigue. She read by candlelight, practiced her music, and listened to the whispers of servants and statesmen. Yet fate, as ever, moved in mysterious ways. When Emperor Gaozong died in 649, tradition decreed that his concubines, untouched by the emperor, must retire to a Buddhist convent, cut off from the world, their youth exchanged for devotion and prayer. And so Wu Zhao entered the convent, her head newly shaven, her silks replaced by plain robes. Some say she wept for the life she had lost. Others claim she found peace among the chanting nuns and the scent of sandalwood. But in her heart, the flame of ambition never dimmed. Even as she swept temple floors and recited sutras in the moonlight, she waited and watched, knowing that destiny had not spoken its last word. Thus, the girl from Wenshui passed from the splendor of the palace to the quiet of the cloister. But the wheel of fortune would soon turn, and the world would remember her name. Under the lantern-lit eaves of the Forbidden City, fate stirred once more. Wu Zhao, now grown beyond the innocence of her Wenshui childhood, would soon step from the hush of temple halls back into the turbulent world of the imperial court. It was Emperor Gaozong, son of Taizong, who changed the course of her life. Gaozong, gentle of heart and uncertain of health, remembered the concubine from his father's palace. Some say he sought comfort in her intelligence and calm. Others whisper of a fateful encounter at the temple gates, where Wu's serene beauty caught the emperor's lingering gaze. In the quiet corridors of power, longing and ambition often walk hand in hand. Summoned from her convent, Wu Zhao returned to court, not as a mere ornament, but as a woman marked by insight and purpose. She became a concubine once more, entering a palace now filled with new rivalries and old traditions. Life in the inner chambers was a tapestry woven of silk and secrets, where every word could tip the balance between favor and exile. Wu Zhao bore Emperor Gaozong several children, each birth strengthening her place at his side. The emperor, drawn to her wisdom and wit, found solace in her company. She read poetry with him under moonlit lattices, advised him softly as court debates raged outside their private rooms, and soothed his ever-ailing spirit. Her influence grew, subtle as the drifting petals, in the imperial gardens. Yet the path to power was shadowed by rivals. Empress Wang, noble and childless, and consort Xiao, beloved for her beauty, watched Wu Zhao's rise with wary eyes. The palace, a place of jade floors and shadowed alcoves, became a battlefield of glances and unspoken accusations. It was during these years that controversy darkened Wu Zhao's name. Whispers wound through the painted halls, tales of jealousy and a terrible act, the death of her infant daughter. Some said Wu herself was to blame, seeking to implicate Empress Wang in a cruel plot. Others believed it was a slander, born of fear, a weapon forged by those threatened by her ascent. The truth, cloaked in centuries of rumor, remains lost in the mists of time. What is certain is that the tragedy tilted the scales, casting Empress Wang and consort Xiao into the shadow of imperial disfavor. In 655, the court echoed with the rustle of crimson robes and the murmurs of officials as Wu Zhao was named Empress Consort Wu, formally replacing Empress Wang. The coronation was a spectacle of silken banners and golden lotus lanterns, a vision of power claimed by a woman who had never forgotten the lessons of the convent or the ambitions of her youth. As Gaozong's health waned, his mind troubled by headaches and frailty, Empress Wu stepped quietly into the role of co-ruler. She sat behind the beaded curtain during councils, her voice a gentle command, her presence felt in every decree. Ministers soon learned to weigh her words as carefully as the emperor's own. The empire, vast as the morning sky, was guided by her steady hand. And so Wu Zhao, once a girl from Winshui, then a silent observer in the halls of power, now ruled in all but name. The court, resplendent in silks and jade, awaited the next turn of the dragon's wheel, as the Empress's shadow lengthened across the marble floors of the Forbidden City. And so it unfolded, beneath the watchful eyes of ancestral spirits and the silent gaze of stone lions in the palace courtyards. Emperor Gaozong, ever frail, breathed his last in 683 CE, his departure sending ripples of uncertainty through the empire. The dragon throne, draped in shimmering silk, stood empty, awaiting its next occupant. Yet, in the hush that followed, it was not a prince or regent who drew the eyes of the court, but Empress Wu. Custom dictated that power should pass to Gaozong's sons, first Zhongzong, then Ruizong, names inscribed in the lineage of Tang, young in years and uncertain in will. Some say Wu Zetian stood apart in her mourning robes, her face veiled, her thoughts hidden behind a calm mask. Yet even in grief, she moved with purpose, her voice low but resolute. She was not content to fade into the background, as widowed empresses before her had done. In the shadow of the throne, Wu Zetian maneuvered with quiet brilliance. She observed the court with a gaze sharpened by years of watching, waiting, and learning. Regents, ministers, and royal kin all became chess pieces on a board she knew by heart. Some resisted her growing influence, clinging to ancient codes. Others, sensing the winds of change, pledged their loyalty to her vision. Zhongzong, the eldest son, was the first to ascend. Yet his reign was brief. For when he showed signs of independence, favoring those not approved by the Empress Dowager, Wu Zetian acted swiftly. With a stroke of her authority, she deposed him, sending him into exile and placing his younger brother Ruizong on the throne. Ruizong, more pliable, became little more than a figurehead. In the great halls of Chang'an, it was Wu Zetian who issued edicts, heard petitions, and steered the ship of state. For nearly 7 years, she ruled as Empress Dowager, cloaked in ceremonial modesty, but wielding the true power of the empire. Her court was a place of calculated grace, marble floors swept clean, courtiers in embroidered robes treading softly, and the air thick with the scent of sandalwood and intrigue. She listened to the grievances of peasants, consulted with scholars, and received envoys from distant lands. Yet always there were whispers of plots and betrayals, of rivals who vanished into the winter night, of loyalty and fear braided together like the threads of a silken sash. It was said that Wu Zetian's intelligence was matched only by her patience. She surrounded herself with capable officials, many drawn from humble origins rather than prestigious clans. Through her reforms, the civil service examinations became a true gateway to power, judged by merit rather than lineage. In the jade study halls, hopeful scholars bent over their scrolls, dreaming of service to the empress who valued wisdom above birthright. But the heart of her authority lay deeper still. Wu Zetian understood that power must be both seen and felt, both feared and revered. She established a network of secret police, silent watchers who moved through the city's alleys and palace corridors, listening, recording, reporting. Dissent was met with swift retribution. The court, resplendent by day, became a place of shadows by night, where even whispers could prove dangerous. Yet she was not content with strength alone. Wu Zetian turned to the realm of faith, seeking to root her reign in the divine. She expanded the role of Buddhism, commissioning temples and supporting the translation of sacred texts. Monks traveled from distant mountains to offer her blessings, and the Great Cloud Sutra, prophesying the rise of a female ruler, was recited in incense-filled halls, its meaning echoing through the hearts of her subjects. Some believed she was a manifestation of Maitreya, the future Buddha, sent to bring order to a troubled world. All these currents converged in the year 690 CE. Under a sky heavy with autumn rain, Wu Zetian gathered her supporters. In a ceremony rich with symbolism, she declared the end of the Tang and the birth of a new dynasty, the Zhou. She proclaimed herself Huangdi, emperor in her own right, the son of heaven reborn as a daughter. The court, stunned and uncertain, bowed before her. For the first and only time in Chinese history, a woman sat alone upon the dragon throne. In her new dynasty, the Emperor's court blossomed anew. Scholars debated philosophy among the perfumed peonies. Poets composed verses in her honor. Artisans carved stone dragons to stand sentinel at her gates. Through it all, Wu Zetian reigned with a balance of silk and steel. Her judgments at times gentle, at times relentless, always attuned to the tides of power. So it was that Wu Zetian, whose journey began as a girl in the gardens of Wenshui, claimed the mantle of ultimate authority. Her ascent shattered centuries of tradition, casting a long shadow across the empire. Some rejoiced, others trembled, but none could deny the age of the Empress had begun. Under Wu Zetian's reign, the empire entered an era of both luminous beauty and chilling uncertainty. The Zhou Dynasty unfurled its banners along the riverbanks of the north and the rice fields of the south, its imperial colors reflected in the tranquil pools of palace gardens. The forbidden city, freshly adorned, echoed with the measured steps of scholars and the muffled laughter of courtiers, their robes sweeping like painted clouds across jade floors. Wu Zetian governed with a mind sharpened by hardship and a spirit unbowed by precedent. Her mornings began before dawn, as the palace lanterns still glimmered, with consultations over scrolls of tax records, weather reports, and poetry. She listened to the grievances of the poor with the same patience she granted to generals and ministers. In her presence, the lowliest farmer and the proudest noble found themselves judged not by birth, but by merit and loyalty. Agriculture, the empire's lifeblood, was protected and nurtured under her rule. Wu Zetian ordered the restoration of neglected canals, and riverbanks supervised the distribution of seeds and tools, and reduced burdensome taxes on those who tilled the earth. In the villages, elders spoke of the Empress's benevolence, her decrees reaching even the farthest hamlets. The harvests grew more plentiful, and famine receded like a bad dream. Yet the Empress's reforms extended far beyond the fields. She expanded the civil service examinations, opening doors to those of humble origin who possessed talent and wisdom. In the examination halls, young men from distant provinces copied verses and solved riddles, their hearts pounding with hope. Wu Zetian believed in the promise of intellect, and she filled her court with those who could match her in wit and vision. Under her command, Chang'an became a city of marvels. Architects raised new towers and pavilions, their eaves curved like the wings of cranes. Temples soared skyward, their golden roofs flashing in the sun. At her order, bronze inscriptions were hammered into stone, recording both the triumphs and tempests of her reign. The arts flourished. Calligraphers traced poems on silk. Painters captured the moon's reflection on lotus ponds, and musicians played haunting melodies late into the night. Cultural brilliance radiated from her court. On festival nights, the palace glowed with lanterns shaped like dragons and phoenixes, casting their shifting lights across the marble courtyards. Dancers in robes of indigo and silver spun stories of ancient heroes, their movements as fluid as the river's current. Scholars debated the classics by candlelight, while the Empress, her gaze steady and inscrutable, weighed their words. But beneath the calm splendor of her rule, darker currents swirled. Wu Zetian's government relied on a network of informants and secret police tasked with rooting out dissent and plotting. Accusations, some true, some born of fear or ambition, led to purges of rival clans and officials. The bamboo slips of confession and accusation passed through countless hands, and sometimes the night echoed with the sound of hurried footsteps and the clink of iron fetters. Yet, it was said, the Empress slept soundly, believing her vigilance preserved the peace and stability of the realm. The Empress's relationship with Buddhism deepened, entwining spiritual authority with political power. She supported monks in temples, endowed vast projects, and encouraged the translation of sacred texts. The Great Cloud Sutra, recited in candlelit halls, spoke of a wise and just female ruler, and many believed Wu Zetian was the fulfillment of that prophecy. Statues of the Empress as a bodhisattva appeared in temples, a gesture both pious and political, bolstering her claim to the mandate of heaven. Still, the palace remained a crucible of intrigue. Courtiers schemed for favor, old enemies plotted from exile or in the shadows of the city. Family ties were tested by ambition, and even her own children became pawns in the ever-shifting game of succession. Wu Zetian's hand was sometimes merciful, sometimes merciless. She pardoned those who repented, but banished or executed those who conspired against her with unwavering resolve. Yet the empire, under her rule, remained whole. Borders held firm, trade flourished along the Silk Roads, and peace endured longer than in many reigns before or after. In the quiet of her private chambers, Wu Zetian composed poetry, verses of longing, ambition, and the fleeting beauty of plum blossoms in winter. Some have survived, their words drifting down the centuries, like petals on a stream. So it was that the Empress ruled, a figure of grace and steel, vision and vigilance. Her court shone with the elegance of silk banners and the wisdom of learned minds. But its shadows were deep and cold. Wu Zetian was both a dreamer and a survivor. Her legacy woven of triumph and tragedy, wisdom and ruthlessness. In every corner of the empire, her name inspired awe, fear, and, among some, a secret, grudging admiration. Under the mellow light of her final years, the grandeur of Wu Zetian's reign softened, its edges touched by the hush of age and the shifting winds of ambition. The Empress, once the unshakable center of the court, now found herself beset by shadows, old rivals, restless princes, and the inexorable tide of time. Her hair, once glossy as a raven's wing, now bore the silver threads of 80 winters. Yet she moved through the palace with a regal calm, her robes of deep violet and gold trailing across cool stone. She presided over her court with unwavering dignity, even as the faces around her grew more watchful, more uncertain. The palace, still resplendent, with silks and banners, became a landscape of wary glances and whispered alliances. The air was thick with the scent of autumn chrysanthemums and the memory of old betrayals. As Wu Zetian's health declined, so too did her grip on the sprawling empire she had forged. Rebellions flared in distant provinces, led by generals and princes who had once bent the knee. In Chang'an, the city's broad avenues and temple bells rang with rumors of plots. Within the Forbidden City's labyrinthine halls, her own ministers and family members began to conspire, longing for the restoration of the Tang. The Empress, ever the survivor, fought to maintain her authority. She summoned loyalists, dismissed or confined those she could not trust, and sought solace in the rituals of Buddhism. Yet her circle grew smaller, and even those closest to her, advisors, attendants, sons, seemed touched by the chill of ambition. Some say she took comfort in poetry and prayer. Others claim she remained vigilant, unwilling to surrender the reins of power until her last breath. In the early spring of 705, as plum blossoms opened along the palace walls, the final act of Wu Zetian's extraordinary life unfolded. A coup, led by ministers loyal to the Tang line and aided by members of her own family, swept through the palace with silent efficiency. The Empress, now 81, was compelled to abdicate. Her son, Gaozong, returned to the throne, the banners of the Tang once again unfurled across the empire. Wu Zetian, no longer empress, but still a presence of unyielding spirit, lived only a few months after her fall. She died in quiet, her passing marked by both mourning and relief among those who had served her and those who had feared her. In death as in life, she defied easy judgment. Her tomb, shared with Emperor Gaozong at Qianling, was marked by a singular absence, a blank stele, left uninscribed by imperial decree. Some say it was Wu Zetian's wish, a final challenge to those who would judge her. Others believe it was her enemies' refusal to honor her memory. Yet the empty stone endures, silent and enigmatic, a mirror for the questions her life left behind. In the years that followed, scholars and storytellers argued her legacy. Was she a tyrant who ruled by fear and cunning? Was she a reformer who opened doors to the poor and wise and sheltered the arts in a golden age? The truth, like the echo of her footsteps in the marble halls, lingered, complex, unresolved, and deeply human. Wu Zetian, the only woman to claim the dragon throne, left behind more than an empire. She left a legend of ambition and endurance, of cruelty and compassion, of a spirit that refused to be forgotten. Even as the Tang Dynasty flourished anew, her shadow stretched across the centuries, awaiting the judgment of those yet to come. Under the drifting lantern light of later centuries, Wu Zetian's story grew into something larger than life, a tapestry woven with threads of both history and myth. The halls where she once ruled echoed now with the voices of scholars, poets, and dramatists, each retelling her tale in a different light. Her memory, like the moon reflected on a lotus pond, shifted and changed with every era. In the generations that followed her death, Wu Zetian became a figure of controversy. Confucian historians, guardians of tradition, wrote of her as manipulative and immoral, a woman who upended the natural order, usurped a man's place, and ruled through suspicion and cruelty. They described her court as a web of intrigue, her rise as a warning. In their scrolls, she was the embodiment of ambition unbound, a lesson to women who dared to dream beyond the household gates. Yet the people's memory was not so easily shaped. Ballads sung in the markets of Chang'an told of an empress who championed the poor and wise, who rewarded talent and protected the land from famine and war. Her image appeared in the painted panels of Buddhist temples, serene and beneficent, her hands folded in prayer. Monks recalled her patronage and the golden age of temple building that flourished beneath her rule. Over centuries, legends grew, some gentle, some fearsome. It was said that Wu Zetian could read the hearts of men as easily as she read the classics in her youth. Some believed she was visited by celestial dragons in her dreams, or that she walked the palace gardens in the company of spirits, her fate written in the stars. Others whispered that her rise had been foretold by prophecy, that the mandate of heaven itself had chosen her as its vessel. In opera houses and on the painted stages of shadow puppeteers, her life became a story of power and peril, betrayal and triumph. Dramas depicted her as both a ruthless schemer and a tragic heroine, caught in the storm of destiny. In the flickering candlelight of these performances, she was never just a villain or a saint, but always a woman of remarkable will. Modern times have brought new voices and new judgments. Historians, freed from the strictures of old, have returned to her story with fresh eyes. They examine the records of her reforms, her advocacy for the examination system, her patronage of the arts, and the long stretch of peace under her rule. Feminist scholars, in particular, read her life as a testament to resilience and agency, a defiance of the limits placed by birth and gender. Wu Zetian's legend has found renewed life in television dramas, novels, and films, where she is portrayed as both a master strategist and a woman of feeling. These works explore her doubts and sacrifices, her loneliness in the echoing halls, and her longing for beauty and order in a world of chaos. They do not shy from her ruthlessness, but neither do they ignore her vision, a vision that reshaped the empire and its future. Peace, innovation, and artistry flourished in her time, even as her personal ambition left scars upon the hearts of rivals and kin. Her reign was neither pure nor wholly dark, but a balance of shadow and light, like the moon rising over a palace roof, illuminating gardens and hiding corners alike. And so it is that Wu Zetian endures, an empress who defied the world, rewrote the rules, and left history no choice but to remember her. In the hush of the Forbidden City, under the pale glow of lanterns and the distant song of nightingales, her story lingers, a reminder that greatness is never simple, and the truth of a life may be found somewhere between the lines of fact and legend, in the quiet heart of an empire that once called her its own.